Hey guys, this is Joe D with the Roundhouse Report, coming to you, speaking directly about the stupidity of the Ukrainian military in the response to the massive Russian gains that have been made recently. Important to date, as you know, things could change overnight. It's April 28th, Sunday, 12:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay. It's currently technically spring where I'm at. I'm talking about last year's spring, last year's summer, not now. And this has to do with the much vaunted Ukrainian counteroffensive. Now, while the Ukrainians were last spring, last summer, while the Ukrainians were putting together assault brigades using U.S. weapons, Bradleys, Abrams, whatever, HIMARS, which are very effective, long-range precision missile artillery, multiple rocket launcher system, and what Ukraine learned, because I don't know if you guys remember, I don't know the stupid names. It was a general, it was a Russian general, and I'm not good with those fucking. I'm sorry, I'm not good with those names. So basically, what you had was like, here's the front line in the south. Because what Ukraine wanted to do was splice the South in half. The first line, this is the front line, and then you'd have a trench, a trench, a trench. And dragon's teeth, which are these diamond-shaped, big concrete barriers, are set like double, third, fourth line for miles and miles and miles. This is what the Russians did. They threw up these dragon's teeth, and what they do is they kill tanks. Tanks have a hard time getting over them. You have to spend some time doing it. And in addition to the dragon's teeth, they had massive minefields. I think you guys might remember that from last year. The Russians put out like freaking, at this point, hundreds of thousands of mines. And so their defense post was basically, give me a second. All right, this is really bad. Let me try to get a better one here. I should have already had this made. This is what the three lines of defense that Russia made during the time that Ukraine last year was trying to put their crap together to make a big offensive. The Russians said, we're going to fall back to World War I tactics, and we're going to build a massive trench network with dragon's teeth and huge minefields and anti-tank ditches and multiple flexible lines of trenches. So what a flexible line of trench means is this. If this trench, again, these are all Russian. They have three lines. Minefields, dragon teeth. If they manage to punch through that and they hit the center trench, a flexible trench system means this thing could swing over and envelop. Or it could mean that the Ukrainians crossed the first one, and that's pretty significant. The whole point of flexible trench system is, if they start to make a breakthrough, this trench system can go to the flank while still being supported by another train system here. So these things, you attack into them, but they're flexible, so they can bend. These trenches can bend in accordance with whatever is tactically sound on the ground. I hope that makes sense. My drawings are not very good. But basically, three layers of trenches separated by huge amounts of dragon's teeth. Look those up on Google Images. Dragon's teeth, huge minefields, three very, very strong trench lines that I just showed you with the flexible trenches that if they're attacked here and if they're getting overwhelmed, they can bend back, but the back trench will come and hit the flank. So I don't know if I'm making sense to a person who doesn't know these terms, but I hope I am. So the Russians did that while Ukraine was preparing to do their offensive. The Russians were like, we're just going to dig trenches. We're going to dig a massive fortification network that's 3 lines deep. So 3 lines, that's called defense in depth. If you break through the first line, there's another line. If you break through that line, there's another line. but you're not going to break through them because unless you have overwhelming military superiority, mainly manpower, which Ukraine is running out of. I personally feel that they should hire. I mean, they're putting these people who are not formally eligible to be recruited. They're recruiting them now, the Ukrainian military, and they put them through 3-4 weeks of basic training, and then they send them off to the front line, and they get killed. So they have a huge manpower problem. Now, so I've often thought recently, that they should hire mercenaries, kind of like what the Russians did with the Wagner Group. I don't know if you guys remember that, but the Wagner Group was a Russian-based mercenary, so it had direct ties to Moscow. But there are SAS units, which is the English Special Forces. Ex-SAS guys have made a number of really good, I don't want to call them militias, but mercenaries. They fought in Africa. They helped tip 300 former SAS who were in a mercenary group were hired in, I believe, in the early 90s. There was a civil war in Africa, and there was like 300 mercenaries. And because of their tactics, because of their experience, because of the weapons they had, they were able to actually, 300 dudes, turn the tide in a massive civil war in Africa. Mercenaries are very good. So because of the manpower shortage in Ukraine, the first thing I think they should do is hire mercenaries. We just sent them $65 billion in aid. Take 100 million of that, which is a fraction. Take 100 million of that and hire a very robust, sturdy, battle-tested mercenary group of, say, 30,000 soldiers. Throw them on the front lines. It'll make a huge difference, but Ukraine's not doing that. Another thing that Ukraine's not doing is last summer, when they came across those 3 lines of defenses that I just showed you that the Russians made, they managed to break through the first one. It was in the south of Ukraine, and they tried to take a town called Robotyne, which they took after like 2 weeks, because they're going through minefields. It's just insane. What the Russians set up was just amazing. They managed to crawl their way through the first line, maybe the second line, but they were halted. The defense in depth is a very good strategy, especially for a mobile enemy like Ukraine, because at that point we had sent them a lot of Bradleys, Abrams, armored personnel carriers. So that's a highly mobile force. And when you put those against huge trench systems and anti-tank ditches and minefields and dragon's teeth, they're not very effective. So Ukraine got ground to a halt last summer. They should have learned from that. They've had 1 year since then. It's almost the summertime. It's April, the end of April. They should have learned once they went against those Russian defensives, they should have learned, wow, this works. No matter how robust our offensive capability is in terms of tanks, HIMARS, artillery, Bradley fighting vehicles, armored personnel carriers in general, it was all mauled up. So instead of trying to take a lesson out of the Russian playbook, which was used with profound effect against the Ukrainians last spring and summer. Hang on, I'm sorry, I'm nicking out. A couple of friends I blame on that, but whatever. So, it's dumb. The Ukrainian high command, the highest echelons of their military, they're not ignorant. They saw what happened last spring, last summer. They saw how effective those triple trench defense and depth systems were that the Russians had made. They saw firsthand how effective they were, how they stopped them in their tracks, pushed them back up. So I was like, all right, well, surely the Ukrainians are doing the same thing. Apparently, nope. They've had a year, last summer to now. They've had a year to make at least triple layer defense network. Just like the Russians, they had 3 defense trench systems. Instead of the Ukrainians spending their time building something similar, a defense in depth with 3 trench systems that are angular, bendable, flexible, depending on which wing gets hit, setting out massive amounts of dragon's teeth. As far as mines, I have no idea, but what Ukraine should do is exactly what Russia did last year, is set up these huge defensive lines that are static. They're not mobile. They stay in the trenches. And again, if they're in a trench here, and it's a flexible trench, and they get hit here, and they bend back, this part of the trench could come in and help them. I hope I'm doing it. It's just my hands. I can't. I hope I'm doing it justice, but the Ukrainians have done no such thing. They have made lines. They have made defensive lines, but nothing. There's no defense in depth, no multiple lines. And by multiple lines, I mean sturdy defensive combat lines. The Russians had 3. As far as I could tell, the Ukrainians have nothing. I've been researching this for a while now. They learned. They should have learned. So they're not operating by not making a defense in depth, basically by not copying what the Russians did against them that worked so well. They should have been like, all right, we're going to do the same thing because Russia's coming at us. And right now, over the last month, Russia has made huge advances in Ukraine. A lot of that's just due to lack of ammo on the Ukrainians' part, a lack of manpower, etc. But had there been layered defenses, ditches, all that, trenches, it wouldn't have happened that way. So I've been looking up, and the Ukrainians have not. Yes, they've laid dragon's teeth. I'm assuming they laid mines, but in terms of flexible defensive trench systems, no. They learned how powerful they were, and so they weren't working out of ignorance. They were working out of stupidity. Wow, the Russians stopped our offensive last year cold. They stopped them with those trench systems. The Ukrainians were beaten back. It's been 1 year. The Ukrainians have had plenty of time to absorb what they learned and to make similar, if not almost identical, trench systems, defensive networks, dragon's teeth, anti-tank ditches, etc. 3 deep lines of defense. Just literally copy what Russia did, and they haven't done that. I don't know what the crap they're doing. I've been trying to find out what they're doing. I mean, they have trench systems, but nothing. There's no defense in depth. There's nothing like what the Russians did. And if I was the commander of the Ukrainian army and I saw how effective that Russian defensive those 3 lines were in the south, I would be like, okay, we're doing that because now we failed. Now it's Russia's turn to do a counteroffensive, which as of recent in the last month they've taken a massive amount of territory. So Russia, Ukraine has not set up these defenses. I don't understand why. It's not out of ignorance. They fought them face to face. They know the power of them. So it's not out of ignorance. It's just stupidity. The Ukrainians are under some kind of a dream where they think that they don't need to do that. They need to be maneuverable. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, flanking. No. Right now, Russia's on the big advantage. They're upticking assaults, spearheading assaults in eastern Ukraine. Ukraine has lost a lot of territory over the past 3 months. I'm sorry, after just 4 weeks, for the last month. And they haven't done anything about it. And it's so frustrating because it's like, dude, you fucking idiots. Look at how great it was for the Russians, and now you're not doing anything. You're not doing crap. You're just focusing on mobility. In a war of attrition, you need trench networks. I've explained this all before. So the fact that Ukraine hasn't done this means that they are not ignorant. They're dumb. The high command is dumb. There's no other way to put it. They're just dumb. This would be like the high command. Hey guys, yeah, last summer in spring, we were just stopped cold by those 3 defense in depth trench lines that are in the minefields and everything that Russia laid out. We were stopped cold. Well, what should we do? I recommend doing the exact same thing they did because it's their turn to do an offensive. No, we're not going to do that. We're just going to take our chances. It's just dumb. It's just stupid. It's dumb. It makes no sense at all. And that's what's currently going on in the Russia-Ukrainian war. They just got $65 billion, like I said, to help resupply their HIMAR systems, which are MLRS, multiple launcher rocket systems, and they are high precision, and they beat the equivalent of Russia's Grad system, which is another multiple launcher system. The HIMARS have greater precision, they have greater range, but I'm getting off the track. So they have $65 billion. How are they going to use it? They've had a year, guys. I'm frustrated. They've had a year and they haven't done anything. They're just getting swallowed up. So that's all I have right now. I just want to make a video because I've been researching this for a while now, and the Ukrainians are not doing what they ought to be doing. And that's one of the reasons why the Russians are punching holes through their front lines left and right, left and right. Now, I wanted to bring up a source. Combat Veteran Reacts. You just type that into YouTube. Combat Veteran, and it'll pull up on its own. Combat Veteran Reacts. His name's Paul. He's the former platoon commander in Afghanistan. He really knows his crap. He really studies his different maps and his different resources. I recommend going to him if you want to find out any more information. Combat Vet News. Or no, I'm sorry. Combat Veteran Reacts. Let's see here. All right, those are my notes. I think I covered everything. Again, my video has exceeded 15 minutes. I doubt most of you are watching. If you are watching, put a smiley face in the comments. I would really be curious as to how many people actually sit for 17 minutes and watch my ass ramble on, smoking a freaking cigarette, having a drink. I mean, so let me know what you guys think. Tell me if you watched the whole thing. That kind of give me a perspective in terms of how much I need to clip. But I think I've laid my case pretty soundly. The Ukrainians are dumb. They're not doing what the Russians did, which was greatly effective. The Ukrainians ought to have learned. They clearly haven't, which means it's not a matter of ignorance. It's just stupidity. It's dumb. They're not doing what the Russians did, and as a result, they're getting their front lines punctured left, right, left, right, left, right. The Russians are making massive, massive territorial gains, relatively speaking, in the east and southeast of Ukraine. Again, Combat Vet Reacts is the best source for the Ukraine-Russian war. This guy's neutral. He knows what he's talking about. So I recommend him as a good source. He knows a whole lot more than me. And that's all I got for you guys. I'm on 17 minutes. I hope you guys watch and put a smiley face. That'll make me feel good. Like, wow, someone actually watched all this? Put a smiley face. That'll make me feel good. All right. So this is Joe D with the Ryan House Report. I am out. What's up?